You've been fishing on this lake by yourself for 3 years. But what gets caught on your line tonight will keep you from ever going near that lake again. Fishing stopped being just a hobby for you a long time ago. Since you grew up in northern Michigan, the woods have always been a part of your life. But this lake is different. You had just lost your wife. Then this lake came into your life, and over time, you gave it a name on your own. You started calling it Claire's Lake. That night, just like always, you're sitting on the rock by the lake's edge. Aside from the occasional sound of birds taking flight and a few fish splashing the water's surface, everything around you is completely silent. You've been used to this silence for years. Instead of disturbing you, it slowly lifts the entire weight off your shoulders. Some time passes. Just as your attention begins to wander, your fishing line suddenly grows heavy. At first, you think a big fish has taken the bait. You reel it in excitedly, but something feels off. Big fish usually tug the line back and forth. This one, however, just gets heavier. It's as if you're pulling up a lifeless object caught on the bottom of the water. The dark shape, slowly approaching the surface, finally breaks the water's surface. You realize it's a piece of orange fabric tangled in seaweed. At first, it looks like an ordinary piece of fabric. But when you look closer, the black letters on it catch your eye. The word DOC is written in black across the chest. Curious, you pick up the wet fabric. As you unfold and examine it, the orange color, the thick texture, and the elastic bands at the cuffs catch your eye. A few seconds later, you realize that what you're holding is a prison jumpsuit. For a moment, you can't make sense of what you're holding. Assuming it's just an old jumpsuit someone threw into the lake, you're about to set it aside. But you notice that the orange color is still vibrant. The fabric doesn't look worn out as you'd expect. You've been fishing in this lake for years. Many things have gotten caught on your line before, but none of them have unsettled you quite like this. You set the jumpsuit aside and wipe your hands on your pants. Even having touched what you just caught feels strange. You glance around, but there's nothing in sight. To ease the unease in the air, even just a little, you take the small radio from your bag and turn it on. Picks up a station broadcasting at night. The host is answering calls from listeners. You set the radio down next to the rock and reach for your fishing rod again. Just then, your gaze drifts to the opposite shore of the lake. You make out a dark silhouette among the trees. You're not sure what it is. You look a little longer, but you still can't make out exactly what it is. Just as you're about to turn back to your fishing rod, thinking the darkness is playing tricks on you, the silhouette shifts slightly. In that moment, you realize it's not an optical illusion. A few seconds later, the shadow moves again. With slow but determined steps, it begins walking toward the lake's shore. For a moment, you think it might stop or look around. But without any hesitation, the moment it reaches the shore, it steps straight into the water. A moment later, it disappears completely from view. The lake is once again shrouded in silence. You hold your breath and wait. Then, on the dark water's surface, you see steady waves, this time approaching you. You stand up and take a step closer to the lake. The water is completely still again. Nearly 3 minutes pass. Your curiosity slowly gives way to unease. You don't take your eyes off the water, but nothing changes. By now, he should have at least surfaced. A few seconds later, the water's surface stirs again. This time, it's much closer to you. First, a head emerges, then his shoulders. The man silently makes his way to the shore. He's wearing a soaking wet t-shirt and old pants that are too tight for his large frame. His clothes look as if they've become heavy from the water, but he doesn't seem to care. As if oblivious to the cold or the wet, he starts walking straight toward you. His mouth is moving. He's saying something, but because of the distance, not a single word is intelligible. Only a broken, muffled murmur can be heard. You freeze in place for a few seconds. You involuntarily take a step back, then another step. The man never stops walking. The distance between you is slowly closing. In that moment, you realize that waiting was a mistake. You turn around and start running toward the trail. Out of breath, you reach your car. You open the door, throw yourself into the driver's seat, and lock it immediately. You don't take your eyes off the trail's entrance through the windshield. With your heart still pounding, nothing happens for a few seconds. About 30 seconds later, he emerges from the darkness. He heads straight for the belongings you left by the lake. He bends down for a moment and opens his backpack. He pulls out a spare t-shirt and puts it on. But the t-shirt is too tight for his large frame. The sleeves are too short, and the waistband doesn't quite close. He zips up the backpack and looks up. This time, he looks straight at you. He stands there motionless for a few seconds. Then he turns around and walks into the forest, disappearing from view. With trembling hands, you pull out your phone and dial 911. Your voice is breathless. As you try to describe the lake, the man emerging from the water, and the orange jumpsuit you found, you have to gather your thoughts several times. The dispatcher on the other end tries to calm you down. He confirms your location over and over, telling you to move to a safe area and stay on the line until the teams arrive. But even as you speak, you can't take your eyes off the windshield or the entrance to the trail. About 20 minutes later, the police arrive. You tell them what happened and point out the direction the man went. The officers search the area but find no one, neither on the shore nor in the woods. After a while, they tell you not to stay in the area and leave. When you return home that night, you can't fall asleep for a long time. Whenever you close your eyes, the same image keeps coming to mind. That silhouette on the opposite shore of the lake, his heavy footsteps as he enters the water, and him walking toward you as if nothing had happened. The next day, while the TV is on at home, a news story catches your attention. The name of the region where the lake is located appears on the screen. Then the headline, "Missing Inmate," pops up. The moment the photo appears on the screen, you freeze in your tracks. It's the exact same man you saw from your car that night, the one pulling a t-shirt out from among his belongings. That image never leaves your mind again. Days later, the search efforts prove fruitless, and the man is still missing. As for you, you never returned to that lake where you'd found peace for so many years. You experienced this toward the end of last fall. Miles away from the city, on a pitch-black river barely visible even on maps, you're alone in the old fiberglass boat your father left you. It was the last striped base season before winter set in. The area is completely deserted. You turn off the engine and drop anchor. As you set up your line, your hands move so instinctively you could do it with your eyes closed. A reflex honed by the hundreds of nights you spent with your father on these boats. You came here at 3 a.m. for one last catch because you knew all too well how those big bass would lunge blindly for bait in the freezing darkness once the tide stopped. For the first hour, you let yourself be carried away by the rhythm of the night. Every now and then, something tugs at the end of your line, but the fish don't seem very eager tonight. There aren't any other boats around. For a moment, you think to yourself, I guess I'll consider myself lucky if I can even make it home with a few fish tonight. Just as you're about to check your line again, you feel a slight tug on the rod. At first, you think it's just a small wave passing by. But when you turn your head, you notice a small inflatable boat, drifting with the current, has come right up alongside your boat. The current is slowly carrying it toward the reeds along the shore. Inside, there's a yellow raincoat, an upright thermos, and a flashlight still burning, casting a faint glow on the water. The fact that the flashlight is still on makes you think the boat might have been left here very recently. But when you look around, you don't see the slightest trace of its owner. There's no movement on the shore, nor a single sound piercing the darkness. At first, you don't think much of it. You figure maybe the owner has gone ashore. But when your gaze drifts back to the boat, this time it lands on the clothes inside. A pair of wet jeans, an inside-out sweatshirt, and a single sneaker, its mate nowhere to be seen, are scattered haphazardly across the boat's floor. Just then, a faint clinking sound comes from under the boat, as if something had brushed against the metal hull and slid away. You're used to such sounds on the river. Assuming it's a piece of driftwood carried by the current or some other object floating by, you continue to focus on your fishing rod. You startle. You drop the fishing rod and lean over the side of the boat. The water is murky. The moonlight illuminates only a few meters below. At first, you make out a dark silhouette beneath the boat. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, the shape gradually comes into focus. First, you notice the black diving suit, then the mask that completely covers the face. There's an air tank on his back. A fully equipped diver, but he isn't moving at all. He isn't surfacing, nor is he being carried away by the current. He's just standing there, as if suspended in the water. You've been fishing in this river for years. It's not impossible to see a diver, but almost always there's a pickup truck, a trailer, another boat tied up, or at least a spotter waiting on the water's surface. A series of possibilities flashes through your mind. Maybe it's a training exercise, or maybe he's looking for something he lost. But every time you look around, you see the same scene. The silent river, the dark bank, and that diver standing all alone. Just as you're about to back away, the diver suddenly rises to the surface. He grabs the edge of the boat with one hand. Before you can figure out what's happening, his other hand grabs your wrist. Instinctively, you pull your arm back. The diver pulls you toward the water with all his weight. The boat tilts to the side, and water splashes in over the edge. For a moment, you lose your balance, but you manage to grab the edge of the boat with your other hand. For a few seconds, both of you are frozen in place. The diver won't let go, and you strain backward with all your strength to keep your arm from being pulled away. You yank your arm back quickly. As soon as you free your arm, you throw yourself back toward the center of the boat. Your first instinct is to grab the anchor. You grab the rope, your hands tangling in your haste. Once the anchor is free from the bottom, you pull the rope into the boat and reach for the ignition key. The engine doesn't start on the first try. Just as you're about to turn the key again, you involuntarily glance at the water. The diver is no longer directly beneath the boat. He's silently moving toward the side of the boat and slowly approaching the surface. On the second try, the engine starts. You shift into drive and floor the throttle. Just as the boat starts moving, the diver grabs the gunnel from the water. As he hangs there with his full weight, the boat suddenly heels over. You lose your balance and river water splashes inside. While trying to regain your balance with one hand, you don't let go of the throttle with the other. As the boat picks up speed, the diver's grip loosens, and he finally lets go. The boat finally starts to pick up speed. As the distance between you widens, you involuntarily glance back. This time, the diver is on the water's surface. Only his masked head and shoulders are visible. He isn't moving his arms, nor is he following you. He remains motionless where he is. In the darkness, It's as if he's watching the boat drift away. A few seconds later, his head begins to sink slowly beneath the water. He tilts his head forward, then silently submerges. A few seconds later, the water's surface is as calm as before. When you reach the dock, you turn off the engine and pull the boat alongside with some difficulty. After tying off the line, you don't move for a few minutes. There's no sound except for the wind blowing along the river. Even though what just happened took only a few minutes, it feels like it lasted much longer. When you come to your senses, you grab your flashlight and start inspecting the boat's hull. Where the diver was holding on, you see deep scratches that have cut through the gel coat. In some places, the fiberglass strands are exposed, and there are dents the size of a palm on the hull. You've never seen damage like this, not even when you scraped against a rock before. The next morning, you take the boat to the repair shop. The mechanic examines the damage at length. "Did you hit something?" he asks. You don't know what to say. "It got caught on something in the water," is all you can manage. You try to explain more, but even to yourself, what you're saying doesn't make sense. After that night, you think about going fishing on that river a few more times. Each time you get the boat ready, grab your bait, and then back out at the last minute. Even though months have passed, every time you look in the direction of that cove, the first thing that comes to mind isn't the fish. It's that masked face, motionless a few meters below the water's surface. And no matter how much time passes, one question refuses to leave your mind. What was that man really doing in that dark river? Why was he right beneath your boat? You grew up in a family of fishermen. This small pier on the main coast feels like home now. You spend most of your day here. For the past few months, it's become a habit to head out to sea for a few hours to fish before your daily work begins. For you, this is no different from doing yoga or meditating. It's the only moment before the day begins when you can clear your mind. Toward the end of fall, the season is almost completely over. With the arrival of November, the pier grows quiet again. Most of the boats that were packed to the brim all summer have been hauled ashore. The few people who still head out to sea practically know each other. Around noon, a customer arrives. A man in his late 20s, looking no older than 30, walks in. The dark windbreaker he's wearing is spotless, as if he just bought it. It's strange because you're not used to seeing people like this here. Customers usually arrive in older, more seaworthy clothing. This man, however, isn't wearing any of that. He says he wants to rent one of the small fiberglass boats for an hour. Since it's off-season, every customer is valuable. Still, you don't hand over the boat right away. You ask for his license proving he can operate a boat. He pulls it out of his wallet and hands it to you. After checking his documents and completing the registration process, you hand him the key. Despite a slight hesitation, you can't find a reason to turn him away. Normally, most customers chat for a few minutes before taking the boat. They're sure to ask a question or two about how the sea is that day, which area has better fishing, or the weather. You watch him as he boards the boat. He doesn't look like a fisherman, but he moves as comfortably as someone who's been using the boat for a long time. This makes the question mark in your mind grow a little bigger. But as the sky begins to darken, a sense of unease slowly creeps in. You step out in front of the shop and look out at the sea. You try to make out the boats circling on the horizon one by one, but you can't see his boat. As the daylight fades, the sea begins to disappear into the darkness. You can't bring yourself to close the shop without retrieving the boat. Not only are you responsible for the boat you rented, but a feeling inside you compels you to wait. You sit down on the old chair at the edge of the pier and pull your jacket tightly around you. As the cold wind from the sea hits your face, you tuck your hands into your pockets and continue to wait. A short while after darkness has completely fallen, you notice a small light out on the open sea. At first, you can't tell which boat it belongs to. You grab your binoculars from the cabin and head back out to the pier. When you bring the binoculars to your eyes, you realize it's the boat you rented. But here's the strange part. The boat isn't moving. It's hovering almost exactly in the same spot on the waves. It's waiting motionless, as if the engine had been turned off or the anchor had been dropped. You wait a few more minutes. When the boat doesn't budge, you take one of the spare boats and head toward that light. As you get closer, you notice the boat looks empty. The engine is off. The boat is just drifting gently with the waves. You pull up alongside it and call out, "Hello, are you okay?" There's no answer. You call out again. Still silence. You turn on your flashlight and shine it into the boat, but it looks empty. You look around at the water into the darkness, but you see no movement, hear no sound. There's only the sound of the waves crashing against the boats. After securing your own boat tightly and tying the rental boat to it as a tow, you begin pulling both of them toward the dock. On the way back, you keep checking behind you, scanning the darkness of the sea, searching out of the corner of your eye for any movement, but you see nothing. When you return to the pier, you tie the boat up in its spot. You try to go over what happened in your mind again and again, but nothing quite fits together. Before closing up, you jot down the man's name, the time you found the boat, and its location in the logbook. You think maybe it really was an accident. Still, you decide to call the authorities first thing in the morning. The next morning, as soon as you open the shop, you report the situation to the authorities. After briefly explaining what happened, they say they'll send a team. About half an hour later, the door opens. The man who rented the boat yesterday walks in. He still has the same calm expression on his face. He pulls a wad of cash out of his pocket and sets it on the counter. "I'm late, and I'm sorry I left the boat there," he says. "Whatever the late fee is, I've more than covered it." As you take the money, you can't help but ask, "Where were you last night?" "I found the boat in the middle of the sea. There was no one inside." The man remains silent for a few seconds, as if he's trying to choose his answer. "I pulled the boat up to shore. I walked a bit. When it got dark, I lost my way," he says finally. What he says doesn't make any sense to you. You know exactly where you found the boat. Just as you're about to say something, the sound of sirens is heard in the distance. The man's attention suddenly shifts outside. He listens quietly for a few seconds, then sees police cars approaching the pier through the shop window. The man, who had been standing quite calmly just a moment ago, suddenly changes his demeanor. "I'll come back later," he says, turning away. He doesn't stop even when you call out to him. He walks away from the pier at a brisk pace. A few seconds later, just as the police cars pull up in front of him, the man has already disappeared from sight. As soon as the police arrive, you lead them over to the boat. You explain what happened that night, where you found the boat, and that the man had stopped by a few minutes earlier and then left again. Then you hand them the logbook. While one of the officers takes notes, the other begins inspecting the boat. After a while, they return to their vehicle to check the name and phone number they were given. A few minutes later, they come back to you. They say none of the information matches any records. The name isn't listed, and the phone number isn't in use. At that moment, the same thought crosses your mind. The only thing you know about the man who rented the boat yesterday is what he told you in a few sentences. Everything else remains unclear. You never see the man again after that day. He doesn't come back to rent a boat, and no one in town reports seeing anyone who looks like him. Even though months have passed, what happened that day still won't leave your mind. Sometimes you run through different possibilities in your head. Maybe he was on the run from the police, or maybe he wasn't alone on the boat. Maybe you've noticed a detail I didn't even think of. Leave your theories in the comments. If you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. See you in the next story.